Hello, everybody. There we go. Hello. Welcome, welcome. My name is Meredith Gershenson. I'm a research analyst here at workforce.com, and today I am joined by Tracy Notte. She has a SHRM and SPHR at Shift Technologies. Tracy, thank you so much for coming on. I really appreciate it.
Thank you for including me. I'm thrilled and honored to be included.
Awesome. To give a little background on Tracy, Tracy has overseen all aspects of the human resource department and heads Shift's HR strategies surrounding, and not to say the least, employee relations, engagement, talent acquisition, compensation, and payroll, performance, and talent management. Again, Tracy, I'm so excited to have you on. We're going to talk a lot about how to maintain engagement with the sheer amount of employees that you have over at Shift.
Great. I'm ready.
Awesome. To give everyone a quick rundown of our webinar platform here, on the right, we have our chat box. Feel free to throw in any and all questions you have. We'll have a quick Q&A with Tracy at the very end, the last 15 minutes or so. To get everyone acquainted, I would actually love to hear where you're dialing in from. I am coming in from super rainy and gross Chicago today, so I hope everyone's weather is a little bit better than mine. And then we do have a couple poll questions throughout the webinar as well. Those will slide up right on the bottom left of your screen. I would love for you all to engage with those and, see where everyone's heads are at. Finally, we do have a white paper for you all on employee engagement. It is from Workforce. We did a lot of great research on it, and it will actually cover some of the points that we'll be highlighting here today. Awesome. It's great to see people are coming in. We have Jen coming in from Oklahoma. We have Roxanne coming in from Houston, Texas. I love it. Awesome. And then we are certified in SHRM and HRCI PDC credits. So if you are watching this live, I'm excited to be offering those up for you later today. And I will be sharing those at the very end of the webinar, so be sure to stick around for that. And finally, to give a little background on workforce.com, we are a workforce management software company who specializes in scheduling and time and attendance. And really, our overarching goal is to help business leaders and frontline managers make the best decisions for their company. Great. Awesome. So Tracy, to get things kicked off, I would love for you to tell us a little bit about some of the work that you do at Shift Technologies and how you found yourself as the CPO.
Sure. Happy to. I lead all the people processes at Shift, and I started with them in March of 21. This was just after they went SPAC public in October of 2020. I think the exciting thing is that the pandemic allowed me to be even considered for this opportunity. Had it not been for that, I probably wouldn't even have been approached. I live in Atlanta, Georgia, and this is a San Francisco-based tech startup. But we are all remote, and it afforded me the opportunity to come in as the first people leader. And it's been really fun and challenging. I had to stand up the HR department and create structure and scalable processes that were SOX compliant, because when you go SPAC public, it's kind of the backward way of becoming SOX compliant. Sure. I still enjoy my job and the people I work with every day.
And I'm sure during COVID, there was a lot of change, around that time, a lot of people moving around, and the fact that you got to get into the HR admin side of things and really switch things up and advocate for yourself, as we were talking about earlier, is really impressive to me. I would love for you to tell us a little bit about how you balance, the needs of employees and the needs of a large organization like Shift, particularly during times of uncertainty, times of change that COVID has brought on, or even those mass layoffs and furloughs.
Sure. Yeah. Unfortunately, we have been in a constant state of flux and disruption the entire time that I've been with Shift. We've experienced 3 RIFs, 2 acquisitions, location closings, location openings, COVID outbreaks, 2 CEO changes. And I think that it's when times are uncertain that it is really important that employees feel their voices being heard and that you have strong communication. When I came in, the company had really just started this whole remote first environment. So just to give a little background, Shift is an online used car retailer. Mm-hmm. We have locations, we have dealerships. And so when I said we're 100% remote, corporate, we are, but we definitely have people that work on site repairing vehicles, selling vehicles, and so forth. And so we have a little bit of everything. And when I first started with the company, there seemed to be this really big communication gap. And there was not a lot of structure to how people found out what was going on in the organization, because the company started off really small, scrappy tech startup in San Francisco with a beautiful office that everybody came into. And there were daily stand-ups and there were weekly town halls and all kinds of social opportunities. And then everybody starts working from home and they're in a little bubble. So one of the first things I did when I came in was talk to the CEO and said, okay, we need a cascade of communication. We're really good at getting together at the executive level, but then it really drops off after that. And so I created this where we have the board meeting first, and then we have the executive meeting, and then that cascades into a senior leadership. We call it the XLT meeting. And these are virtual. We don't bring people together, they're virtual. And then we created this meeting in a box so that those leaders that attend the XLT meetings are then expected to cascade that information down to their location or department leaders. And once a week, we do something called Under the Hood, which is like a virtual town hall. And I think it's through all of that over communication that we're able to really help people through a lot of change and uncertainty.
It's interesting. I really like how Shift has it structured in the sense of separating, those who are working on the front lines and having a meeting to discuss that versus more corporate, more, the remote group, I guess, and having a meeting, a town hall, so to speak, to discuss about matters there. Are there any, this is just a personal question, are there any differences that you see between the two meetings in terms of some of those agenda points and how those are run through? Or are they pretty much similar, just more into the issues on frontline workers, in-person working versus remote?
The meeting in a box is kind of distilled down version, because not everything we discuss at the board meeting or at the executive meeting needs to be shared with everyone in the organization. And so our vice president of operations or vice president of fulfillment or VP of, we call it recon, but it's reconditioning, think, mechanics and techs. The message to them is tailored so that it's relevant to their day-to-day and what they need to hear. And so that's where that meeting in a box comes in. I draw on that from my experience with Advanced Auto Parts when we had stores all over the United States, and the district managers would literally get a box with handouts. And
so I love that.
That's awesome. Meeting in a box that everyone gets the PowerPoint presentation, and then they can add things that are relevant to their audience.
I love that. That's really smart. And I'm sure it keeps you guys really in line with, the agenda points, getting to what needs to be discussed, and everyone's out, everyone, has the rest of their day.
It helps to control the message too, so that everybody is really hearing the same thing.
I love that. That's so smart. And then, we talked a little bit about this, but what role does technology play in Shift's overarching HR operations?
Well, we are essentially a tech company. We're based in Silicon Valley. We're here with all the tech giants and the scrappy startups. And so we have always embraced technology in every aspect of our business. We have a large engineering and product team that work hard every day to deliver an online experience for our customers, whether they're buying or selling a car. But internally, we use technology for communication, employee engagement, and really most of our people processes. Slack is really embedded in our culture. And so we've got, hundreds of Slack channels. And a lot of the things that we do are based on technology. So as an example of that, we just socialized our new company core values. And the best way to do that, we thought, was to make it fun. And so we created a Beat the Hacker escape room game to socialize core values, so that at the end of the game, we're going to keep it live for about 30 days. And then we have a leaderboard, and we're giving away some Apple Watches. For HR specific to your question, we implemented UKG last summer, and that has automated pretty much all of our people transactions. It's improved our efficiency, reduced cost, improved our service and access to data. And this also allowed us to provide real-time metrics to our leaders so that they can make decisions more effectively.
That's so interesting. I on our end, we hear a lot of concerns around, especially for those working on the front lines. Let's say it's a restaurant, and there's a lot of concern around, well, we can't really balance technology and communication. There's nothing that replaces the one-on-one communication that you get between a manager and their frontline staff or whatever it might be, or even employee to employee, staff member to staff member. So I'm curious, how do you balance the benefits that technology reaps? Obviously it gives you all of this access and makes things a lot easier on the HR operation side of things, but how do you balance that with the need for personal interaction within the workplace?
Yeah, I think you said it best. There's no substitute for personal interaction.
Right.
And we're a very dispersed team. And so, but we have employees in almost every state. And it's really difficult to foster collaboration, engagement, and belonging when everyone is sitting in their own environment.
Mm-hmm.
So to counteract this, we really work hard to bring people together virtually. I mentioned the Under the Hood that we do as our virtual town hall. And with that, we always introduce new team members, and they have to tell us, where they came from, what team they're on, and what's in the trunk of their car.
Oh, I love that.
But then we also have the ability for people to ask questions in advance of our leadership team, and we answer those in the moment during these virtual town halls. I've also personally hosted virtual baby showers, bridal showers. We're doing all hands meetings, HR happy hours on Fridays. We've done executive wine tastings. I mean, just all kinds of things that we can think of to bring us together, even though we don't really have the budget to bring everyone together physically. But I will say for HR, we have to be where the people are. We can't manage the entire HR process from our home office.
Mm-hmm.
So it's really important that we're out in these dealership locations and we're spending time in those locations, and that makes us all the more accessible, and it makes us better business partners.
That's really, you guys have got it going on. You have Apple Watches, you got wine tastings. This sounds amazing. And I think you brought up a really good point. You got to go where the people are. And I think that's such an important aspect, where you can have all the Starbucks gift cards, you can have all these amazing benefits, but at the end of the day, unless you're communicating with them, especially one-on-one, and that's a lot easier said than done with a company like Shift's size. I think that's really difficult. And we'll go into more of that later. Quickly, I wanted to point to this poll question that I sent out asking, what is your biggest concern coming into 2023? And the majority of our audience is saying employee engagement and employee retention. So that leads me to my next question, is looking ahead, what do you see are the biggest challenges and opportunities facing, the human resources field generally?
Yeah, the usual suspects, talent acquisition, retention, employee morale and engagement, especially in remote work environments, improving diversity, equity, inclusion. And those things will probably always be challenges for HR professionals. I don't know if this is the biggest challenge, but I think ChatGPT is going to be a huge disruptor for HR.
Oh, interesting.
If you think about it, ChatGPT can do a lot of manual tasks that an HR person does today. Write job descriptions, write job advertisements, write HR policies, screen resumes, create employee survey questions, even respond to employee questions. I could go on, and everyone has an opinion about ChatGPT, and some don't believe that we'll have that much of an impact. But I believe we're in the early stages, and that ChatGPT, as it gets better and more accurate, will transform work as we know it.
Interesting. Even, I've used some of ChatGPT in my own day-to-day. Even with its impersonal touch, do you think that it can really take away that human connection that we have with HR?
I don't think it'll take away the human connection, but if you think about some of the things that are more transactional I think that
Interesting.
GPT will replace with more accuracy than humans a lot of those really transactional things in in HR, the daily plumbing of HR, so to speak. People that email in questions about their benefits, or they, need a change notice, or we have to update some sort of policy. ChatGPT could write an HR policy in probably 20 seconds.
Oh, wow. Interesting. I never thought of that, especially more on the admin side of things. I'm sure it can take off a lot of that. So, and this is really hard to stay ahead of, but how can people stay ahead of these challenges, these disruptors, or even get ahead in sense of the opportunities that we may be offered?
I think awareness is the biggest key. Ensure that you're in the know on the new trends. Sign up for these webinars and that come through email. And it seems like every day, you're having an opportunity to join some sort of webinar or lunch and learn. But more importantly, don't get caught up in a new HR trend if it doesn't add value to your business. Know what's important to your business and your people, and then really focus on that.
Mm. I love that. And I would love to go more into the idea of organizational transparency. And this is a really big buzzword that we've been hearing on the HR side of things. In your opinion, baseline, what does transparency mean to you for an organization, and why is it so important, especially nowadays?
Yeah, transparency seems to be a big buzzword out there. And
Mhm.
to me, it just means open communication between leadership and employees, and sharing to the extent possible what's going on, why certain changes are being made, how it impacts the employees, and most importantly, owning up to bad decisions and taking accountability for them.
Mm. Are there any steps that anyone can take in terms of promoting this transparency, even if it's internally within their corporate setting versus externally from, corporate to those who are working on the front lines as, shifts, structure is?
I think it's asking for feedback and making it okay for people to ask questions, especially of leadership. And then when leaders openly share what's going on in the business and the failures, people feel included in the company. They feel more connected to the goals and the strategy, and that will make them more likely to want to contribute.
Interesting. We've been having a lot of webinars on, in the past, especially on the concept of open door policies. And, I think that in a sense promotes a certain level of transparency. There's the idea that anyone could come up to the HR, the HR head of HR, HR director, CPO, whatever it is, and ask them whatever they need to know. And essentially, hopefully, at the end of the day, get the answer that they like. But I'm curious, what your thoughts are on the open door policy concept, because I've heard a lot of pushback specifically from our friends in HR.
Well, open door wouldn't just be the head of HR. It would be the
Right.
ability to go to anyone in the organization, including the CEO, about a concern. And that really helps to know that I can go to the CEO if I'm a line level employee and ask a question or complain about something. It doesn't necessarily mean that the CEO is going to be personally invested in solving that person's problem. There still is the chain of command, and it's still very important to preserve that and allow people that are responsible for their own departments to solve their issues,
Right.
to address concerns. The open door policy concept is really to prevent, things that happen that department leaders try to cover up. And we probably, as HR professionals, all been in those situations where, in order to complain about harassment or discrimination or fraud or whatever it is, you had to go to your next level supervisor, and maybe that's the person that you suspect. And so I don't know what pushback there might be on the open door,
Yeah.
other than if people are trying to circumvent, solving issues in a more productive way with their direct supervisor.
Yeah, and I know from, the conversations that we've had, it's mostly been issues pertaining to a lot of time being spent talking to those on the front lines, a lot of time not necessarily spent, more on the admin side of things and the paperwork and all that fun stuff. So it's interesting. And I love the idea, again, going back to what we were talking about on the internal meetings, versus those that focus more on the external, those who are working on the front lines. And I think making sure that your C-suite, your corporate office is all on the same page in terms of, okay, this is what we're going to say to this is what we're going to say to that. And maybe having that open door policy as an option, knowing that things are in order on that side of things is really smart. And it's a really good way to set things up.
Yeah. I mean, in a public company, we have to be really careful.
Sure.
Transparency is still a value that we embrace, but there's, material non-public information, there's insider trading commitments. So we really have to be very aligned and mindful that what we're telling our shareholders is also what we're telling our internal teams. And sometimes we can't share. And we'll get questions in the under the hood meetings about things that we haven't released yet. Our earnings releases on March the 28th, and people are asking for like our EBITDA results from 2022. And, we can't talk about that until we release our earnings report. But I think in those situations, it's really important to say, we can't share that with you, and here's why. We're not trying to keep anything from you, but this is our commitment to our shareholders. And you can join the earnings release calls, and they're also recorded. And so it's just explaining and helping people to understand.
That's interesting. And that leads me to my next question perfectly, in asking, how can a company balance the need for that organizational transparency versus the need to protect that sensitive information?
I mean, transparency isn't about sharing everything. So there's still a need to keep things confidential. And it's just a matter of explaining. We had a situation just recently, and I got asked directly, why did we make a certain decision? And I said, I don't feel comfortable getting into that with you right now. When we make a company announcement, please feel free to come back to me and I'll answer any questions that you have.
I love that. And I think, again, that sort of communication promotes the idea of, you can still come to me, but you're not necessarily going to get the answer, I guess, at the end of the day that hasn't been released yet or made public yet, because for obvious reasons, right? I asked the question in the polls, does your organization promote transparency? If so, in what ways? And what has been the response of your employees and or upper management? And I wanted to highlight this one answer. Somebody said, yes, we want our employees to hear it, quote unquote, from leadership first, eliminating conjecture or speculation, keeping everyone's mind on the work at hand. Again, kind of going back to our original point there, it has been accepted well and has made our organization more productive. Again, I think with this concept of open door policy, there's this idea of lack of productivity happening when your door is always open. And I think you brought up a really good point. This goes beyond HR's door. This is for the entire upper management store. This is for all of those who are working in the corporate sector. This is for C-suite's door. Everyone's door is open. So I think that there should be a lot of lost work at the end of that if everyone is feeling, oh, I can go in and ask this question and get some sort of answer, even if it's not necessarily the one I'm looking for. It's something.
Well, there's usually a very small percentage of your organization that takes up the majority of your time. The people that show up at your door or calling you or slacking or, emailing you, it's right. In my experience, it's usually the same people over and over again.
Sure.
And it's managing their expectations.
Interesting. So in your experience, how has employees responded to increased transparency within an organization?
You can't always predict how people will react to what you share. Sometimes you get praised for being transparent, and sometimes there's backlash. But it's always important to explain the why on decisions the company's making and how it impacts the employees. So if the decision or the message is not well received, but it's well explained, it goes a long way to build trust. And when people don't know what's going on, they're going to fill in the blanks with conjecture and supposition. And then the rumor mill starts churning. And usually the supposition is a lot worse than reality.
Mhm.
So conveying a bad message, but the truth is a lot less damaging.
Do you have any recommendations on how somebody could maybe better communicate that idea to them in terms of what was it that you said? Not transparency, but making sure that they're understanding the reasoning behind a decision.
Yeah, I mean, I think it's circumstantial depending on what the decision is. In
Sure.
my organization, we paid less than target bonus, and that was not well received.
Right.
We closed some locations, that was not well received. But we really put forward the reason behind the decisions that we made and how it affects the people that are impacted. And then the why. Like, we're really working
Mhm.
hard to build our business strategy, and some of these things that we've done, negatively impacted our ability to do that, and so we had to course correct. And I
Yeah.
think that really being vulnerable, almost, to say we screwed up, we made a bad decision, we decided to run really hard in this direction and realized that that was the wrong thing to do, and we pivoted and course corrected. And as a result of that, we've decided that we have to lay off this department or we have to close this location. It's just being really honest with
Yeah.
people.
I love that also, because going back to that poll question we had on what's your biggest concern, a lot of people are saying employee retention, right? And I think the idea of cueing people into the mistakes that you made and saying, hey, this is why we made this mistake, or this is why we're laying off this group of people. It not only diffuses that sense of panic, I think, that a lot of people get, especially when there's furloughs, especially when there's layoffs, but also it helps with, okay, we're all in this together. It helps with the idea of loyalty at the end of the day. And there's something to be said for your upper managers, your C-suite, that you literally are looking up to and are signing and paying off your checks. And if they're queuing you in to the day-to-days of running an organization, there's something to be said for that. I've worked at companies that have both queued me in on things and said, hey, we're just coming at you straight up, and this is what's going on, versus, oh no, we're like, this is not talked about. This is not public information in any sense, let alone, it's just hush hush through employees or talking to each other. And there is a sense of, I don't want to work for a company that is going to be hush hush about things, that's going to be laying low and under the radar, versus, hey, we're owning up to this and this is what's happened here.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I think it's a really interesting concept. And I think, going into the retention and engagement side of things, I would love to hear on, what are the most common reasons that you found why employees leave an organization or end up, quitting?
Yeah, there's lots of reasons people leave. And if you do exit surveys, you've likely seen all the usual reasons. The one that sticks out the most to me, and I think the one that's the easiest to solve, is people leave for lack of career development. It's hard to convince the C-suite to increase wages, and there's always that manager that seems to turn over their entire team every year. But when someone is seeking to grow their career and they feel they have to leave the company to do so, that's driving turnover. And so investing in employee development is one of the most proactive methods to reducing turnover and increasing engagement and satisfaction. I was looking at some surveys recently, and now more than ever, employees are seeking to improve their skills and learn new skills. They're signing up for courses and boot camps and webinars. And the survey said that 94% of employees said that they would stay with their current employer longer if that company invested in their career and their future.
Wow. That's amazing. Do you recommend any sort of development tools that you guys use maybe at Shift?
There's so many tools out there. So I hate to promote, any
Sure.
one particular thing, because I think it depends on, do you got a bunch of engineers? Did you have line level people?
Right.
We started using LinkedIn Learning,
Oh,
which
nice. Yeah,
it's affordable and it's
for
been
sure.
really well adopted. But you can do things internally. without a whole lot of money. I mean, if you go through the talent management process and you identify who really wants to move up into the organization, because not everybody does. Not everybody wants to move up. Some people are really happy being an individual contributor. And then what are the skill gaps if somebody does want to continue to grow with the company or just in their career? What are the skill gaps? What is it about this person that when we have an opportunity, we pass them over? And then identify what can we do?
Right.
And then work with that person. And it might be they need to go to Toastmasters, or you're sending them to some sort of, offsite career development, a certification, whatever is that's relevant to that particular person, and then set aside some money by department to take those top, whatever percentage it is, depending on your organization, that you can invest in career development.
I think that's such a good point. And there's so much free information already out there. And there's free audits, there's free YouTube videos that you can look up. There's all these things that you can do to like test your skills as is, know what you need to work on, go look that up on Google, specifically on whatever industry you're working with. And you're going to have a whole slew of information coming for, whatever team you're working with, whatever, subsect, whether it's developers, whether it's those working at the cashier, whether it's those who are in sales, whatever it is. It's so important to simply just be Googling and constantly improving. And I think it's interesting, that statistic, I think it was 94% want that development within their career. It's interesting to think that, those, especially with an hourly workforce, are wanting to improve and wanting to move up the ladder. And we've had topics in the past on career path growth and making sure that it's really clear on, what their future looks like at the company. And again, that really increases that idea of loyalty. And there's a ton of webinars that I can point you guys to if you guys are interested on the idea of growing your career and how to communicate that exactly.
Go ahead.
Book. It's on my shelf here somewhere. It's called FYI, which stands for Your Improvement. It's an oldie but goodie. I think it's
nice.
The 6th edition. It's about this thick. It's expensive, but it has all these competencies in it. And then it has suggested development opportunities, whether it's reading articles or going to a webinar. And it tells you if you're trying to solve for a specific competency skill gap, these are some development ideas. And I have that. My former RVP used to say, bring your Bible, and I'd go into the performance review. We'd sit down and we'd write the performance review. We would have conversations about the particular person. And I would flip in my book and I go, well, it sounds like we're talking about this.
Sure.
And we would really write very dynamic and thoughtful performance reviews.
Oh, I love that. It's called FYI.
FYI. Mm-hmm.
The Bible called FYI. You heard it here.
I called it the Bible.
Right. Of course. I think that's genius, though. And again, that is an exact, example of what I mean by a solution that is virtually very inexpensive. I know this book is probably a little more expensive, but I'm sure if you go to the library or anything, you could probably find it for free and rent it out. But that is awesome. That's such a good tip. I would love for you to talk about how your organization, how Shift, measures employee engagement and what tools you use to measure that feedback beyond just surveying.
Yeah, we use Employee Voice, which is in UKG, to measure employee engagement. It's a pretty dynamic tool. It assesses the sentiment using AI in the word choices that the people use when answering the survey questions. Mm. However, no matter what tool you use, the most important thing is actually doing something with the data. If you ask for feedback but don't action around it, you're doing more harm than good, and it would be best not to even do an engagement survey. Last year, we had an 80% participation rate, which was the best we've ever had in the employee engagement.
That's awesome.
But I attribute that to the process that we defined after the survey closes, which is to set up listening circles by department to go over the results. We read the verbatims, and then we ask the circle, what are 1 to 2 things that this department can do to improve engagement? And then we do it. And then when each department leader does this, it creates momentum, it creates buy-in. I mean, we can't solve everything like giving everyone more money or lowering the cost of health insurance, but there are things we can do and we action around them. So each department has their own listening circle. And then as an executive team, we take it as a whole and say, okay, if we put 10 things on the list, we'll do none of them. But if we put 2 or 3 things on the list, we're actually going to get these done. And one of the things that was on the list for 2021 was improved communications.
Mm-hmm.
And that's when the whole cascade and the meeting in the box. And so actioning around people's feedback, when people know that their voice is being heard, they feel valued. And then that in turn drives engagement.
I love that. And I really like the idea of making sure you're working in a smaller grouping of things, opposed to saying, all right, we got 10 things to get done. We have 10 things on the to-do list. Instead, you're batch working that. You're saying, you know what? Let's just focus on these 2 or 3 as of now. And I think that's so important. I think making smaller steps for that bigger impact is so underrated. And I think it's great when, especially those who are CPO, CHRO, thinking really big picture items, because there's a sense of creativity within the role. You can really implement some awesome techniques. You can, again, do whatever survey questions, whatever definition you want for engagement. I think it's awesome. But at the same time, I think there's a sense of getting ahead of oneself of, okay, how are we going to get all this done? So I think that's really great that you guys are doing more 2 or 3 tasks, it seems like, at a time. I love that. And then I would love for you to talk about, what are some of the challenges that you're facing currently in employee retention, and how have you addressed them maybe more head on?
Yeah, our company is probably dissimilar to some of our participants because we have had so much flux this last 2 years. Our stock price went down to 11 cents, I think, and we had to do a reverse stock split to get us over $1 so we wouldn't get delisted. We had a lot of change in our business strategy, and so the turbulence caused us to have a lot of retention issues. And one of the things that we did that I don't necessarily advocate, though, is that we put together some breadcrumbing on retention bonuses.
Mm.
It worked. It kept, we lost very few people that we wanted to keep. I mean, we had some reduction in force and things like that. But I really believe that retention bonuses drive retention. They don't keep people engaged. They don't keep people, motivated. It's just, I'm staying because I have this carrot hanging out there. So aside from those things, we've really tried to have a very cohesive team and celebrate the wins. One of the things that we started last year that's been really well received is we celebrate the different, Black History Month, Asian Pacific American Heritage Month, Women's History Month, Pride. And we do it in such a way that, like, for Women's History Month, I had a panel of women leaders in our company. And it's similar to this, I was the moderator and I asked them questions, and we had such a turnout that people were really excited about hearing from our women leaders.
Yeah.
Had the chief product officer from Grindr on for Pride Month, and we talked to him in detail. And so it's celebrating those different and being inclusive, those different months, and then being inclusive. We've partnered with some local businesses. So for Black History Month, we had some Black-owned businesses, and we bought sweets and things from a bakery called Southern Roots, and we had it sent out to all of our locations, and then remotely we gave them a coupon that they could get something delivered online. And so supporting those businesses and then celebrating our diversity has really driven a lot of engagement and retention, I think, had we not been doing things like that.
That's so interesting. I love that. And again, I love the, events that you guys are putting on and showcasing hey, essentially we're all in this together. There's a certain relatability when especially when it's a panel and you're asking questions, kind of like, again, like this format. I think it's really empowering. That's awesome. I'd love to go more into the Q&A section. I actually got a message from Jen. Thank you so much, Jen. She asked, can I ask Tracy to share about the retention program more in detail?
About the retention bonus program that I was talking about?
I believe so. And Jen, you can message me if that's incorrect, but I believe that's what she's referring to.
Yeah. What we did was, of course, everything had to be approved by the comp committee. And I worked with our CFO to model out what would it be meaningful to put out there as a retention bonus for each level of person in the organization. And so we had a retention bonus in November. And so the thought was, okay, we paid annual bonus in March, then we had a retention bonus in November, and then at the first of the year we had merit, and then we had our March bonus again, and then now we have a retention bonus that's payable this coming June.
Mm-hmm.
And I took our bonus plan, which was annual, and we have carved it up into 2 tranches. So the first half of the year is payable in September, and then the second half of the year results plus overall, so I'm calling that a roll up. So overall company results is payable in March, like it always has been. And so it's just this breadcrumbing, like, okay, a lot of times when you have an annual bonus and it's payable once a year, you see an exodus of people that are holding out just to get that bonus.
Yeah.
We're like, okay, how many people will we lose in March? What if we did something else that's payable in June? And so it's like every few months we have some sort of trigger, but I don't necessarily, I mean, it depends on what's going on in your organization. We're doing this because we need to keep
Right.
turning on our business, and we can't afford to lose a bunch of engineers. And so it's just, I don't want to call it desperation because it's certainly not that, but it was just creativity on how can we get people to continue to contribute and not leave us after the annual bonus.
I love that. And again, that breadcrumbing technique is so interesting. It would be interesting to see how that, would work for someone who is maybe working on like a smaller size company and seeing how something like that, or I guess maybe not probably to the extent of the bonuses or, the program that yours is at, but maybe even something smaller scale like gift cards or something like that, just to keep them on track a little bit and keep them, essentially engaged at the end of the day.
When you say gift cards, I kind of get like this PTSD because when I first came into this company and my last, they were giving out all these gift cards, and I'm
Right.
like, taxable income, what are we doing? And so we actually implemented this system called Snappy, and
Okay.
people love it.
Oh.
It is this rewards and recognition platform, and you can have an API to your payroll system. So you set it up to say on somebody's anniversary, if you're doing service milestones, it automatically sends an email, and it's this cute little snappy blue furry monster that says, congratulations, and on your 2 years or whatever milestone you want it to be. And then it selects a gift for you. But if you don't want that, you can go into this marketplace and shop. But what I love about it, more so than some of those other ones where you get points and you have to save up points, and then you go in there and you're like, oh, I don't have enough points for this. Snappy only shows the employee what they can afford. So
I love that.
They don't know what the budget is. So you might say, okay, we're going to do $50 for 1 year and $100 for 2 years, as an example. They're only going to see gifts up to that $100. So everything they see, they can get. And the company takes care of the taxes. So we also use that for spot recognitions, because I was getting a lot of the EAs report to me, and they were saying, oh, this person wants me to order a bunch of gift cards to send out. And I'm like, no, let's do the Snappy. And it's really been a great tool for us.
That is so cool. I just sent the URL link in the chat box for those who do want to check it out. That is really cool, just seeing what their homepage looks like and seeing what they have to offer. That's awesome. We actually we just rolled out on our end points-based attendance system. So I think it would be really cool to be able to integrate that or have some sort of system going on there with Snappy to be rewarding those who are showing up on time, you know, not doing no calls, no shows, that sort of thing. That is a really great tip. I love that.
It's affordable too. Sometimes
Yeah.
reward platforms are really expensive, and this has been very affordable.
That's awesome. I actually have a follow-up question from Jen. She asks, who can recognize and give points to another employee?
Oh, through the Snappy?
I'm assuming so, yeah. Yes.
The department leader has a budget that we set during our budget season. And so if a line manager said, I want to give, you know, John a Snappy recognition because whatever he did, he saved a customer or, you know, whatever he did, then all they have to do is get approval from their department leader. And then we just send it out. And it can be sent through Slack, it can be sent through email, or it can be sent through text. And it shows up on your phone and it's like scratch off and then it shows.
I love that.
It's very techy too, which is kind of fun.
Yeah.
And then when somebody gets the gift, they have the opportunity to thank you. And I have a whole folder in my where I just drag them over because I had one lady that said, this gift saved my life. I have to go to the gym every day to just work off stress, and my earbuds were broken. And I just got these. I mean, she wrote like 2 paragraphs and I was like, wow. I mean, this is really impacting people more than I would have thought.
Oh my God. Talk about a rave review of Snappy. I mean, get them on for a case study. That is awesome.
And Snappy is not paying me for this.
Yeah, guys, not sponsored. We swear. Just go check it out. That's so awesome. Oh my God. That's like a great time. That's a great way to start your day, honestly. I would love to go into the emailed in questions. We have a couple here. I'm going to run through them. And if you guys have any questions, throw them in the chat box. We'll be sure to prioritize those. We got a follow-up from Jen, actually. She said, we have a similar program and give 2,500 points a year for each employee to give away. That is equivalent to $25, and each recognition is displayed for TVs on TV screens. That's awesome. That's really cool too. And I think I love the idea of displaying it out on a TV screen. Keeps everyone accountable. It keeps everyone, you know, having fun, and improves that culture for sure. We have a question emailed in from a Lauren K. We're having a really hard time getting approval from our C-suite and approving funds for some of our retention initiatives, and they think that turnover is a built-in sunk cost that we can expect. How can I convince them otherwise? And how would you go about presenting your argument to increase these funds?
That's a really great question. I appreciate that. There is some truth to turnover being a sunk cost because you're always going to have turnover.
Sure.
However, if you're losing top talent or you're a higher percentage than industry benchmark or your company trend is increasing, you may have a bigger problem and retention initiatives are in order. I would first want to find out why people are leaving. Start with slicing and dicing your turnover report by voluntary versus involuntary, talent designation, location, manager, job title, pay band, gender, age. I mean, you could slice it up any way all kinds of ways. Because when you're asking the C-suite to give you money, they want data behind why you want the money. And it's also helpful if you take your engagement survey or your exit interviews. I wouldn't bother doing exit interviews on involuntary because you know why they're leaving, but doing exit interviews on the voluntary terminations. And the more information you have, the better. So you can determine the why behind your turnover. Are you hiring the wrong people? Is it a management issue? Is it lack of internal development, compensation? And then once you have those specifics, use the data to convince your C-suite to invest into addressing those systemic issues that are driving turnover. And I would also say, if you can show the cost of turnover, because you can show a return on investment. So what is the cost of your turnover? And then if we invest in employee development, or perhaps your compensation is out of whack, or whatever the reason is that you're seeing this turnover after you do your due diligence, you could really show a return on that investment. So you're asking for money, but you're giving money back in return. So it could be a net zero.
I think that's so important to talk about in terms of understanding the numbers. And there's so many surveys out there that have already been done. It might be hard to apply it specifically to your industry, but even this handout that I'll hand out in a little bit has some really awesome data around the cost, the ROI, the labor, or the labor costs of turnover in the hourly wage industries. And I think being able to present that is like really good to have that in your back pocket. And it's going to speak more of the language of COO, CEO, CFO, who are more financially driven than CHROs and CPOs possibly. So I think that's a really, really great point. We have a question from Arad R. He asked, what does your collaboration look like with other members of the executive team within your organization? Specifically, I'm curious about the dynamic between yourself and the COO.
Yeah, we have a pretty small executive team. There's just 7 of us, and we meet virtually every week and monthly in person. I also believe in regular one-on-ones, and since we're all in different geographies and busy leading our own departments, this framework provides a lot of structure, and we need that to foster connectivity. Specific to our COO, I keep really close to him, and I keep close to him because his team is running the business. I meet with him weekly, and I always try to join his operations all hands. That was one of those cascade meetings that we put into place last year. And if I can't make it, then I ensure my VP of HR attends so that we present a united front and we hear what's going on in his business. And taking a step back, though, I think that aside from, just the COO, but operations leaders in general and being better support, one of the first things I do when I go to a new company is spending time understanding the business. How does the business make money? What do people do in the day-to-day? What is their work environment? And doing this closes the gap between us and them, and it helps us to be better business partners. So we can't support the business if we don't understand the business. And so the process that I built for my team is whenever anyone joins the HR team, as part of their onboarding, they spend at least a week working in a frontline customer facing position. So they're out selling cars, they're detailing vehicles, and they see what the work environment is like and what our people do. And then because I've done that, that really helps my relationship with the COO. And when we're asked for advice and we're asked to, consult on whatever the decision is or the issue is, he knows that we understand the business.
Yeah, that's really interesting. There's a lot of seemingly a blurred line from what we have talked to with other HR professionals between the role of operations or general managers and those who are just, HR directors or HR assistants, assistant twos, that sort of thing. And I think there's, this aspect of just like not really knowing, okay, this is my jurisdiction, this is where I come in versus this is where you come in as an operations or someone who is just working more on the managerial side of things. And again, it's kind of hard to communicate each other's languages, but it sounds like where it's different a little bit at Shift is you guys are more a team. Like you guys are more just traveling together place to place and saying, okay, let's talk this out and then we'll approach the situation.
We do some travel to the locations for sure. And spending time there really helps us to add credibility. I remember back in my days at Advanced Auto Parts, the HR team would push something out and the store managers or the district managers even wouldn't embrace it because it didn't really suit their needs. So as an example, we had this training and it was all on hiring manager certification. And one of the questions in the certification was, Tell us about a time when you got a voicemail at the store from a customer and the customer complained. Well, the stores didn't have voicemail. And so, and the people in the corporate office didn't know that because they never spent any time in the stores. And so I
Right.
think it's things like that where you got to have credibility, and that's really understanding what people are doing out there.
Yeah. Oh, that's so interesting. That's kind of funny. That's so interesting. We have a question from an Emily G. She said, I'm the head of HR for my very small, less than 50 staff company. Because of our size, it's pretty hard to set some defined lines of career development paths without making empty promises. What do you recommend here?
Yeah. So if I understand the question, like less than 50, not a whole lot of career pathing going on.
Right.
It's important, though, to understand what your people want out of their time with your company and their careers. Sometimes people go to a very small company because that's where they feel like they can be the best contributor and they're happy in that type of environment. Not everyone is looking for the next level. So hopefully you're able to do some talent assessment and talent management. And during that process, ask your employees about their career desires. And if you have people who are actively looking to move up, then work on development plans that allow them to add skills and experiences by way of job rotations or stretch assignments that, aren't necessarily tied to getting promoted to the next level.
Mm.
Always believe that investing in your people is a worthwhile investment, even if they take their newfound skills to another opportunity.
That is such a good point, and I would love to end there. Tracy, thank you so much for coming on as we're coming up on that hour mark. I really appreciate you coming on and really giving some amazing examples and resources, more specifically on what we can do to better engage our employees and make sure that retention stays at an all-time high. So thank you so much for coming on. I really appreciate it.
It was my pleasure. Thank you. I really